Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be talking about the new Empire units. You see, Thrones of Decay has added in a bunch of new units that will be available not just to LSEF, but all of your Empire Legendary Lords. And what I want to do in this video is talk about them in detail. I had a few requests regarding this on what they're good at, what they should be used for, and are they better than other specific units that you might already have access to. The purpose of this video is not to look towards it as the DLC faction, which will naturally boost them up quite heavily anyways, but if you decide to play with Gelt, or Franz, or anyone else. So yeah, let's get started, shall we? So we're going to start off with the Ironsides. This is a heavily armored handgunner unit. This means that the unit itself is very capable in being in melee combat, just in case anything does appear. You never know when a group of marauders or chaos warriors are going to break through your front line. This unit is available to you in the tier 3 gunnery building, meaning that you're going to have access to them fairly quickly. If you're playing with Karl Franz, for example, you can already upgrade to tier 2, and when you're dealing with areas like Reichland, you've got so many settlements, you can really push the growth into your areas really quickly. So what purpose do these units serve in the battlefield? Well, it's very clear that they're an upgraded version of the handgunners, having more stats overall, same range though, but yeah, more armor, more leadership, more melee attack and melee defense, and also more missile strength. You've also got the benefit of the fact that these Ironsides have the black powder discipline, meaning that as long as they stay perfectly still, they will have better accuracy and better reload skill. That ability comes into effect as soon as the battle starts. You don't need to have the enemy nearby, and yeah, it does really help. So we have to look at it this way. You've got less units overall. There's only 60 in a squad of Ironsides, while there's 90 handgunners. Yet the damage output is, at the beginning, very similar until you start coming into the reload time. The Ironsides shoot much faster, and when the zombies actually get up close, yeah, they can handle themselves a lot better. It's clear that this is a upgraded troop. It's supposed to act in the same way, be used in the same way, but just be a little bit better. Personally, I would have preferred if they would have had a different weapon, but this is how they actually were on the tabletop, so either way they perform as intended and as by the law. As a unit, quite like them. I feel like if you're going to go for heavy gunpowder, there's something that you're going to want to have, and you can get them very, very early on, pretty much skipping handgunners in general nowadays. I mean it, you can literally just skip them. You don't need handgunners anymore, barring the ones that you might get for free in terms of your start campaign or your Regiment of Renown. Long rifles are a completely new unit for the Empire. This is a sniper troop, and what you can see here is it's very similar to the Jezzails for the Skaven or the Crane Gunners for the Cathayans. Now comparing them, they are worse actually. The long rifles are worse because they've got less range and they are not shielded, but does make them much more vulnerable. The long rifles still pack a very, very hard punch, and the purpose of this unit is to snipe out characters or to snipe out any big monsters, as they do hit very, very hard. The comparison is there on screen just so you can see the stat difference, but I don't think we should classify them as a Jezzail or Crane Gunner unit, mostly because, again, it's one entity rather than two. They don't have the shield, they don't have the protection, but they're still fairly decent at what they do. These units are available at tier 3, also in the same tier as the Ironsides, meaning that you can get some snipers very, very early on into your campaign. Honestly, I'd put them more or less on par stats, kind of switching here, but with the Crane Gunners and the Jezzails. And it's very obvious that they're good at what they do. You can see here that they're going to be melting down that unit of zombies, and then that Necromancer. Sure, those are units that are going to melt anyways, but it's very important to note that their accuracy is very, very good. I was actually expecting a little bit less, considering that they don't actually have arresting, but yeah, they were doing a lot of damage and showcasing that pretty much not a lot of shots were missing. I don't think near the end there were a lot of missed shots. Their high armor piercing means that they're going to be able to punch through Chaos Warriors, a problem that you're going to be having with, and obviously being able to snipe means that characters such as Vampire Lords, Vlad von Carstein for example, are going to be quite good targets. Overall, a very good addition to the Empire roster, as they were missing a sniper trooper. It was very obvious, and the long rifles have been long-standing in the lore for a lot of time now. Next, we've got the Knights of the Black Rose. So this is a troop which is mounted, as you can tell, and they are a knightly order unit. They've got sword and shield, and they're immune to psychology. This is a pretty interesting thing because they've got anti-infantry. They're good at what they do damage-wise, and the Empire was kinda lacking in sword and shield, I guess. It's just a little bit disappointing when you start looking towards other really interesting knightly orders that could have come in, which would have fit the theme, like the Knights of Moor. Don't get me wrong, they're still good at what they do, and they do quite a decent bit of damage. We'll show that in just a little bit, but I'm not sure. Maybe some other people find it more interesting than me, though. They are a tier 3 unit, though, and that means that you're going to be getting them early on if you want some cavalry-focused armies, which is pretty common, even though we don't really have cavalry-focused characters at the moment. You never know in the future when it comes to Grandmasters. I do feel like their charge bonus isn't too good, and yes, I understand they don't have a lance, so they shouldn't be that good, but they're still charging headfirst into an enemy unit. You'd expect a little bit more of a push. You still see them doing really well in melee damage, and they do excel in it, so I can't really complain too much. The unit is still viable. I don't really use a lot of cav bonuses. I normally have a unit of Reiksguard. I like a unit of Lancers. And at least they are still very fast for a standard cavalry. They aren't considered shock, so 78 speed is very good. And their weapon animation is quite fast, meaning that they are getting a lot of damage out there against these zombies, blending them down fairly quickly. They're not going to be great against characters, but they definitely do perform well when it comes to the standard foot trooper. Alright, next we have the steam tank with the volley gun attachment. So this is a brand new version of the steam tank with the interpretation of a very long-standing White Dwarf article where the steam tanks were made into some very unique interpretations. It's nice, actually. In terms of a tabletop fan, a long-standing one, it's great to see this, as you get to see one of the 12 different types that were there. There were actually a lot more, one with a rocket battery, one with a crew on top, like if it was some sort of war wagon, one with a mortar too. It'll be great if we see the others in the future, I'll tell you that, it'll be really, really cool. But yeah, this is the brand new version which will be available to you, and it's fairly powerful. Remember, steam tanks are a little bit stronger now. So this is a tier 5 unit. Interestingly enough, the landship is a tier 4. We'll talk about that in just a second, but yeah, it's a pretty good unit. Now, when it comes to this, we have to discuss it in multiple ways because we have to compare it to two different units. So obviously we need to talk about the steam tanks and how they differ. The same things happen at the top, so we won't talk about that, the steam cannon and the lovely commander who seems to be having the time of his life, but there is a difference when it comes to range. Obviously, the cannon, the standard one, has longer range, but the volley gun, well, the volley gun itself has higher missile strength, which means that it's going to punch a lot harder. This is because the gun has stabilized itself and, well, yeah, you know, it's a machine gun. It's the lore of Warhammer, you know, certain things can be deflected, others can't. It's a weird thing. But yeah, both are able to do great damage. They're pretty on par with each other. Obviously, the cannon is great for hitting something quite large, whereas the volley gun focuses on punching through troops, but you can use them both interchangeably. Remember that steam tanks themselves are very, very strong. So even when they run out of ammo, which tends to happen quite early, it was happening here, pretty much as they, well, close to the end by the time that they got here, they'll still be doing a lot of damage because, well, you know, steam tanks got really majorly buffed, so they are doing a hell of a lot anyway. Steam tanks are now a must-have unit. But we also have to compare it to the standard volley gun. You see, the volley gun has 4 entities and has better range, so it will shoot more, but the thing is that it's unarmored, it's unprotected, and this does mean that it will fall behind. Interestingly enough, when you start looking into battles, yes, the standard volley gun with 4 entities does fire because it's got more range and it does hit first. The steam tank with the volley gun, however, actually keeps up with it, which is really, really interesting. So it does perform near enough on par. Then when the enemy gets too close, well, your troops, the ones on the actual normal weapon, will start to break, especially with fear or if they take too much damage. The steam tank is still going to keep active. I would say that maybe the steam tank is better than the standard volley gun now, which is pretty insane. Maybe the standard volley gun needs to have his rate of fire kind of popped up a little bit because you do have a full crew manning at it, but yeah, I would say that maybe the steam tank with a volley gun does do better in general than the standard volley gun. Obviously, in a normal battle, this would be different because you'd have other factors like troops at front defending it and so on, but the purpose of this is to showcase a isolated incident just to see how things would work out, because you know, you could get flanked or whatever, right? And lastly, for unique units, we have the Marienburg landship. So this one is fairly unique because it's essentially a steam tank, but it's less armored, but it has a lot more guns attached to it. It's one of these centerpiece models, right? It was released during the Throne of Chaos campaign, and it was just stunning, and it just looks so great in the game too. I tell you, I am so happy to see this in game. It just looks like the model so much, and it's so insanely cool. Now, as a unit, it's pretty good, I must say. It depends on how you use it. As a cannon, it's pretty awful. Yeah, like its front facing is, I don't know, man. I feel like the steam tank cannon or just regular cannons are better, but it does excel in other things, so we do have to talk about a number of things. And really, the first thing that we need to actually talk about is the fact that this is a tier 4. I was expecting this to be tier 5, you know, alongside the steam tanks and so on, but yeah, it's just faster to get. I mean, it's still going to take a while to get to tier 4, but, you know, depending on how you play, it doesn't really take that long. It's just one of those things. Comparing it to a steam tank, well, the steam tank has generally better stats. The only difference is that the landship has more HP and a bit more ammunition. And I feel like both of them are very much on par with each other anyway, because obviously the steam tank is very, very durable, right? So it's going to be able to stay there a little bit longer, even if it doesn't have as much HP. The landship just has a lot more guns attached to it, so it means that it's going to be able to really do some damage up in front. It really depends on what you want. Both of them, I think, are just like really good units at this point. The landship is better for the charge, that's for sure, and you do get a lot of fire going out because obviously you've got so many gunners on top. They're using repeaters too. But the steam tank still outperforms it and catches up, even if the landship had a head start. This is because you can get a really fast move with the landship, but it does start to struggle versus the steam tank when it comes to just in general AoE damage. However, the landship is better at dealing with heavily armored troops, so stuff like Chaos Warriors and so on. Yeah, it's better. The cannon, again, steam tank. Always the steam tank. But the rate of fire and just the armor-piercing capabilities, yeah, the landship. I think it's not about which is better when it comes to these two troops, but rather, could I afford both in my army? I think at this point you probably want both. Have a little bit of fun with it. Before they nerf the steam tank, you might as well. Alright, now we have to talk about the Lord and Hero options because they do count here. We've got the Engineer, which is a standard Engineer character, and then we've got the Master Engineer, which is your Lord. Both of them vary quite heavily, but it's something that needs to be discussed because they will have a lot of uses in the battlefield. And I would say that some options end up outright replacing others, so yeah. We're going to start off with the Engineer Hero because you recruit them like you would a normal troop. You need a building for that, which they can be found in tier 2 in the same line as you're going to be picking up for, well, all your artillery pieces, so it's definitely something that you're going to want to pick up early on anyway. Now, your Engineer character is a mid-range shooter who's able to replenish ammunition on your troops, so you're going to want him anyway, especially if you're going to be bringing him, well, if you're going to be bringing some artillery, you're going to want to be able to buff them up a little bit. And since this is the Empire, yeah, it's likely that you're going to want to do that, so I doubt that you're going to be avoiding this character in any way, shape, or form. Sure, he's not got the best range, but he does have a repeater. You can have him on foot, or as you start leveling up, he'll get a barded warhorse and a mechanical steed, making him heavily armored. Overall, the character is very, very durable, and yeah, interestingly enough, actually, when they're mounted on a horse, any of the two horses, they've got 360-degree firing ops. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be like that, because, I don't know, just seems a bit weird. But yeah, overall, it's a great support hero if you're going to be using a lot of gun boys and if you're going to be using some artillery pieces. Definitely something that you're going to be wanting to bring around. Combat-wise, when it gets up close and personal, yeah, it's not going to do well, so you're going to want to support it. And actually, funny enough, I had an issue here where my shift key was stuck, even though it wasn't actually looking like it was down, so yeah, weird. But yeah, as a support, perfect, especially if you have a lot of troops that shoot out a lot of ammunition quickly. The shot is pretty good. It kind of does better than a Huntsmaster or whatever, you know. And the great thing about this is, as a hero, you can have multiple ones, so if you want to have a spellcaster alongside it, yeah, it's going to work out quite well. It's not like the Lord options, and we're going to have to talk about the Lord options because it's very obvious when some things are a little bit different. The last thing is the Master Engineer, and as it stands, probably the best Lord option, right? The General is kind of weak. I mean, you can have him mounted on a flying unit, which is really, really good, but he kind of lacks at the moment. Same thing with like the Archer General, cool, but not great, and the Archlector, they really need to improve upon like the Battle Priests, let's be honest there. Whereas the Master Engineer, heavy buffs, you can make him really, really strong. He's got a grenade launcher, which means he's going to do a lot of damage, and the main thing is his mount options: Botted Warhorse, Mechanical Steed, Steam Tank. Steam Tank is the best unit so far, so it does make the Master Engineer really, really strong. It does take a while to get up to the Steam Tank, and that's perfectly fine, but I mean, yeah, right? Like, you're gonna get it. It's gonna be easy to level up characters. This game isn't that difficult to level up a Lord type and all that type of stuff. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but having a character on a Steam Tank is going to trump a lot of stuff for me, and having it as an army leader, if you're leveling up your characters really quickly, especially, for example, if you're playing as Karl Franz, which you can kind of just feed experience at the cost of prestige to a character, you're going to have your Steam Tanks up and running really, really quick. It's a really hard to kill character. Yes, armor piercing is still going to do great damage towards it, but when you've got that supported by a bunch of other shit, yeah, things might change when we get Spellcaster Lords. Yeah, maybe Chapter Masters, depending on how those things go, but it's very clear that this is the best, and that's fine, you know. If we look towards Nurgle, the Chaos Sorcerer Lord is very clearly better than the melee focus Lord, right? You've got the same mount options too, so you can have a Rot Beast on both. I don't imagine the Master Engineer is getting nerfed in any way, shape or form. Maybe the Steam Tank itself, but even if it took a minor nerf, it would still be the best Lord option. These are just my opinions. Obviously, other creators and you might have different opinions when you get to play this. It won't be too long now. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. If you want a little bit more Warhammer, there's loads of videos coming out today, and there's loads of videos coming out pretty much until the review embargo, which is just going to be one video that day. By the time that this video goes live, I shall also be streaming on twitch.tv/thegreatbookofgrudges. Why don't you pop by, say hi, let's talk about Warhammer lore, let's talk about the current DLC, update 5.0 and all the rest. And if you're new here, my suggest subscribing to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, it's just kind of like helping the channel grow. It does help in terms of just getting the algorithm to be a bit more favorable to me. Plus, not gonna lie, we're very close to 100,000 subscribers, and it would be kind of cool to get it this year, maybe? You never know. But with all that being said, have a great day, guys. I'll see you all again very, very soon.